Welcome to the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. We're going to talk about this today and everything going on, but this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to this special Mount Rushmore edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Today we're going to talk about quarterbacks, and this was probably a week away from us debuting, but I have some renovations going on in the palatial Central Florida studios that have to be taken care of, so there's certain episodes that there was a little bit of a time crunch. And for today, we're going to talk about quarterbacks, and the question is, who is the Mount Rushmore quarterbacks? And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go from least controversial to most controversial. And in doing that, kind of, I guess keep your interest or whatever. And then in the third segment, we're going to have people like Kara McCutcheon, Derek Vandegrift, Tom Vanderford, if he can stop by today. We are going to get that done as well, so you can get their opinions and perspectives as well, because as you know, we're all about commentary and perspectives, and it doesn't really matter about a single person's opinion. So without further ado, let's start with the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. Number one, to me, in my opinion, all these picks are going to be my opinion, and everything, take it from that. The first one is Eli Manning. Eli Manning has the measurables. He has the stats. He was the number one overall draft pick. He took Ole Miss when they were coming out of the early 90s probation. And in 2003, had Ole Miss having their best SEC record since Vaught. They were 2 missed field goals from the Lou Groza Award winner from going to Atlanta. That 2003 team was really good, and we have Bill Flowers on the show all the time. He tells stories about it. But it was an elite team. And because of that, I think he is the standard bearer of playing quarterback at Ole Miss. And you will find out exactly how I look at it going forward. But that number one position is quite special. He was the one, maybe Romero Miller, but potentially him was the one that taught Ole Miss is like, hey, if we can get an elite quarterback here, we can win. We can go up to the next level. We might not be the richest school. We might not be the most tradition-rich school, but if we get an elite quarterback, we can kind of affect a different level of program sustainability than we did before. And Eli Manning is actually the quarterback that showed us how to do that. That was our first truly elite quarterback. Romero would have been probably a 4-star, even though he was before rankings, pre-rankings. But Eli, being probably a top 50 recruit, great player out of Newman High School, actually was able to show exactly what can be done, essentially. From the quarterback position. And I will argue with anybody, it's a hill that I would die on. He is the greatest player to ever play at the University of Mississippi. And he redefined the quarterback position. All the others are based off of him. And he was based off our number 2. And our number 2 is going to be Archie Manning. So this isn't a Manning love type situation or anything like that. It's more of like the first and second pick of the draft type situation. Big wins. Eli taking Ole Miss to the Cotton Bowl, back to New Year's Day for the first time in little over 30 years, about 35 years. It was a time when they needed to do. But Archie was also at the end of the Johnny Vaught era. Now, that era would have flamed out sooner if it was not for Archie. This was not the best team in the world. This was not the greatest team in the world. Everybody remembers Archie because he was a cultural phenomenon, but also because kind of where Ole Miss and Mississippi was sitting at that time of the century and everything that was going on. So you look at that, and Archie has the measurables. He does not have the stats, but he has the wins. 69 was a fantastic year for him. Wins over Georgia, wins over the Tennessee in the Jackson Massacre. They beat LSU, I think, that year. So there's several like top 10 wins, and they finished it out with potentially beating in the Sugar Bowl the best team that's ever played at Arkansas. So that is why Archie Manning gets on this list. Like you said, if you look at the stats, you're not going to see it. It's a different era of football. But if you look at the measurables, this is a person that could play quarterback today. He would have been a Steve Young type guy today. He would have been an exceptionally gifted quarterback. And he saved Ole Miss from really dropping down sooner, because I believe it was 65 or 66, 67. Ole Miss was teetering between like 4-5 and 5-4, 5-5. It was getting mediocre very quick, to the point where Johnny Vaught started a sophomore quarterback for the first time. He's done that. Somebody that dominated the freshman team. But that was the story with Archie Manning and the cultural stuff that went along with it. The exhale that the Ole Miss fan base had, especially in 1969. The greatest primetime game ever played, quote, was like the first primetime broadcast, Ole Miss and Alabama. It was 33-32. A game of missed extra points. Man, the kicking game was just shambolic back then. But that is why he is on my list at number 2. When we come back, we are going to talk about number 3 and number 4 on my list. It's going to get a little bit more contentious. In the third segment, we're going to hear from other contributors to our channel talking about their list as well. But this is the first Mount Rushmore right here. We're doing lists on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that was only 150 calories and 60 grams of protein. That is what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I've never had anything else like it before. They're available right now, and we can't promise they'll be here tomorrow, so go get them today at Built.com. So go there, get the birthday cake puffs now at Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. That's all one word, LOCKED15, to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for liking the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. You can do us a favor by subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed, subscribe. If you have, tell a friend so they can subscribe. Also, hit the bell whenever you have updates of videos going to the channel. You'll see them. It'll be right there on your phone. You can know they're there. And also, upvote the video itself. Just to let you know, if once we hit 1,000 subscribers on our channel, YouTube channel, by the start of college football season, we will do something we're calling Post Game Live. That'll have different people contributing to the show, Ole Miss legends, high school football coaches, all of that stuff. We're going to talk about a little bit of Ole Miss football. Some days it might just be me if there's like an 8:30 kickoff, and I'm not going to ask anybody to stay up till midnight. But we will discuss what's going on. And if you look over here, that's where the chat module is going to be. You'll be able to participate. It'll be completely interactive, and you'll be able to see what exactly is going on. Also, it'll look real similar, actually. If y'all watch SEC After Dark, it's on the Y'all's Conference Network YouTube channel. That'll be what the layout looks like. Anyway, so we're doing the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks at Ole Miss. And in our first segment, we talked about number 1 being Eli and number 2 being Archie. And to me, that, just makes sense. But now is where it gets interesting, because the reality of this situation is, it wasn't that difficult to make a Mount Rushmore, because there wasn't that many elite quarterbacks that have played at Ole Miss. There's been good ones. I mean, John Darnell. Mark Young had a good moment or two. Ken Austin held the record for a while, John Forcade, all of that, but not necessarily elite guys that you would put up there as a Mount Rushmore. I mean, Archie and Eli have had their number retired. They're number 1 and 2. That's obvious. But there's so many of them, there's going to be really good quarterbacks that don't make this list. And there's going to be some people that, generation bias what's going on. They're not going to look back in the past, and that is absolutely fine. But number 3 for me is Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly should be the number 3 in the quarterback. And other than Archie Manning, most every quarterback that played in Ole Miss has been hurt in their senior year. Is the weirdest thing. Chad Kelly was no exception to that. But he was able to win a Sugar Bowl at Ole Miss. He was able to bring them back. It was first time since '69 in 2015. You want to do the math there. It's like 45 years or something like that between Sugar Bowl wins for Ole Miss. And he was able to get it done. They played actually quite well. Everything looked like they were going straight down the path. Chad Kelly was a dominant quarterback. I think he had the 3rd most total yards total offense in a season, only behind Johnny Manziel's 2 years. I mean, this was a special, special player. And the only reason he doesn't get more recognition than he does is because it's essentially a season and a half. But what we saw was the definition, the absolute definition of lightning in a bottle. And what he did against Oklahoma State, the win against Alabama, which I am going to hold that up as a category for our choices. Eli Manning was 2-1 against Alabama. Archie Manning was 2-1 against Alabama. Chad Kelly was 1-1 against Alabama. He did really good things, really big wins, especially that Alabama game. Sugar Bowl, Alabama game, he's going to go up on the Mount Rushmore. He will be high up. Some people like to claim he's the best player that's ever played at Ole Miss. I do not believe that's the case. And the draft kind of irons that out. If you look at it as measurables, stats, cultural impact, and draft, if you look at those 4 things, you can actually fairly easily separate the top 3. Chad Kelly was drafted as Mr. Irrelevant. That was mainly because he got injured at the point where they were actually worried about it going into the draft. That's the reason he fell. There were talks of him, just like Matt Corral, being a first-round draft pick at one time, but it just didn't work out. So number 3 is Chad Kelly. Number 4, this is where the controversy is going to come in. And I want everybody in the comments section below to give me your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. Tell me why. Tell me what's going on, because this is just my opinion. And I've only been watching Ole Miss football since the early 80s. I understand that. So, some people have only been watching Ole Miss football since 2006. I understand that. It's no big deal. There's no wrong answer on this, but my Mount Rushmore. I wanted to do this so y'all could participate. I wanted to do this to get y'all's opinion just as well as mine. But number 4 on my Mount Rushmore is Beau Wallace. Beau Wallace and Matt Corral had similar careers. They were both injured their senior year. That affected what's going on. That led to an Access Bowl loss. They were both down wide receivers at certain points of their senior year. They had a very similar campaign. They both finished with identical records. They both went to the New Year's Six. The difference for Beau Wallace over Matt Corral, to me, is the victory over Alabama. When I started to look at big victories that Matt Corral had, it was Tennessee, Texas A&M, somewhere there. They beat a 5-5 LSU team or whatever. That's great. The big wins hasn't necessarily come for Matt Corral. Beau Wallace beat Alabama, and that counts. Beau Wallace, like I said, lost New Year's Six. Matt Corral lost New Year's Six. Matt Corral did get drafted higher, but Beau Wallace, with that win as the college quarterback, to me, gets the tiebreaker. So our number 4 quarterback on our Mount Rushmore will be Beau Wallace. So you're looking at Eli Manning, Archie Manning, Chad Kelly, Beau Wallace. That would be the top 4. Now, honorable mentions before I break out and let other contributors participate in the show. The honorable mentions that need to be heard about. First, Matt Corral. If there was a 4B, he would absolutely be there. He would have a chance. He's the greatest leader that is ever quarterbacked at Ole Miss. That's absolutely without a doubt. But numbers-wise and everything else that's going on, I just don't know if he could compete there. Second of all, Romero Miller. Ole Miss isn't where it is right now without Romero Miller in 1997. Somewhere they were signing with Ole Miss, the same class with Deuce McAllister. That class really elevated Ole Miss to the point where it kind of got out of those mediocre doldrums of the mistakes after Johnny Vaught back in the 70s into the 80s. Those mistakes happened. And they needed to get out of that mediocre cycle. And getting out of that, Romero Miller played a big part of that. Rufus French probably first. He was probably the one that got him to go. But Romero Miller did. And because of that, Ole Miss saw, just like I said earlier with Eli Manning, what having a high-level quarterback can do for you as a program. Not just a good quarterback, a high-level quarterback. And Romero Miller made that possible. John Fourcade also, back in the 70s, he saddled by Steve Sloan, essentially. But Fourcade had a good bit of skill as well. Ken Austin, at one time, was a passing leader. You believe the career passing mark at Ole Miss in the mid-'80s was like 6,000 yards? Absolutely ridiculous. So, the game has changed. It has absolutely changed. But we've gotten to a point in modern Ole Miss football where the quarterback position has become the central dominant position of anybody on the field. And players like Matt Corral, Chad Kelly, Beau Wallace, those are all recent numbers. Jordan Tayamu was also there. Shea Patterson took a couple of snaps before transferring away. Matt Corral, you can see exactly what a high-level quarterback is and what it means to this team, and how it has built the modern-day Ole Miss up from the levels that it was in that mediocrity of the late 70s, early 80s, into what it is now. It's actually quite impressive. So like I said before, leave us a comment in the section below of your Mount Rushmore of Ole Miss quarterbacks. We're going to hear in segment 3 from Tom Vanderford, potentially, Kara McCutcheon, and Derek Vandegrift as they give their best memories, their Mount Rushmores of Ole Miss quarterbacks. So it should be a lot of fun about that. So this show is brought to you by BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just give us a 5-star review. We'd appreciate it. That 5-star review will help others find this show. So if you enjoy this show, this is a way that you can make this stand out. So give us a 5-star review. That'll help us with the YouTube or the iTunes algorithm, I should say. And you can see it then. So, all right. Quarterbacks, Mount Rushmore. What's going on? The first 2 segments you heard from me. Now we are going to hear from the contributors that make this channel great. Kara McCutcheon, Derek Vandegrift, etc. We're going to hear from them and find out what they think about the quarterback position at Ole Miss. I'll be right back.
Okay, so just going to go through a little bit of my top 4 quarterbacks from Ole Miss history. So, of course, started off with Eli Manning. So Eli Manning kind of came in at an interesting time. He actually, most don't know, was pretty set on going to Texas until right when we pulled Cutcliffe in that kind of shifted his mindset and brought him to Ole Miss, which for us was great because we wanted to keep that Manning legacy alive. Also, he kind of came in and like just brought us back from kind of these subpar seasons, the 7-5, 7-4, brought us to 10 wins since 1962. Brought us a co-West division rivals in 2003 with LSU. Just really great with these Eli Manning. So, of course, I don't have to tell everyone of you how great he is, but obviously number one. Obviously the next one there's Matt Corral. Matt Corral, we kind of watched really struggle. We saw his whole pattern of how he evolved over the last few years, going from the bench to the starter to a Heisman hopeful into the draft. Won't go too much into Matt Corral as we all kind of just watched him, but definitely number two for me. Number three is Chad Kelly. Man, like looking at Chad Kelly, like this guy had so many highlights just from one season. Beat Bama, beat Auburn, beat LSU. This guy had over 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, Sugar Bowl MVP. I mean, Chad Kelly was fun to watch. There wasn't anything. He was on the ground. He was in the air. Just super fun to watch. Last, of course, I feel is for me is Jordan Tayamu. I know I didn't add Archie, but I wanted to be a little different. I really like Jordan Tayamu. He's fun to watch. He could air that ball out. I think he had a breakout senior season, about 39,000 yards, 19 touchdowns. This kid, man, like in this horrible time for us watching through the sanctions, he really just latched on and was very loyal and just gave us some fun to watch, really lit up the offense with AJ and DK. So some of the best games watching with Jordan.
All right, so when talking about the great Ole Miss quarterbacks of all time, you know, you're obviously going to hear the Archies, the Eli, Chad Kelly, Matt Corral's obviously in that conversation with the year he had for us. One guy that doesn't get a lot of praise, I don't think. He wasn't the most talented. He didn't put up the best stats, but Beau Wallace, when he come in that first year with Hugh Freeze, the stability he gave us at the quarterback position and showing people that we could win here, you know, that was a big deal, getting the Kim Deechees and Treadwells and Tunzels and stuff like that. As far as most important, he might have been the most important one. Another one people don't talk about that I've always loved is Romero Miller. I remember back, I guess I was in elementary school when he was playing high school ball down here in Shannon, and we'd been following recruiting and all that. My dad came home one day and he said, "Hey man, you want to go see Romero Miller and Jamie Armstrong play down in Shannon?" And I said, "Man, are you kidding me? We get to go see Romero Miller and Jamie Armstrong." And we went down there and they were playing Amory. And the way they lit up the field, I thought, my Lord, they're going to win, you know, 3 SEC championships down here in Oxford. You know, he was just incredible. And he had a great career with us. You know, Eli, he broke a lot of Archie's records, but he broke a lot of Romero's records too. It's something that people don't really understand. So Romero's another underrated quarterback for me. But if we were going to go Mount Rushmore top 4 of all time, give me Chad Kelly 1, Matt Corral 2, Eli 3, and Archie 4.
All right, there you go. The Quarterbacks Mount Rushmore edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Tomorrow, we are going to do Mount Rushmore about egg bowls. What are the greatest egg bowls? You're going to have a show just like this. Now, the reason this is early is because the house is being renovated and I needed to can some shows early. So this is starting a couple of weeks, maybe a week early than I would. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how these Mount Rushmores and these players and all that could be interesting. So participate. Be in the comments below. Let me know what's going on. Give me your Mount Rushmores from all the videos we do. Whether it be egg bowls, modern wins, greatest football head coaches, all of those are coming up in the very near future. So this has been the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I'll make your second listen to the Locked On SEC show. Get all of your SEC news in less than 30 minutes with SEC expert Chris Gordy. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow, We're going to learn about Egg Bowls. Peace.